Welcome to US Rugby Happy Hour Live. Interviews with the biggest names in American rugby.
The New England Free Jacks, Major League Rugby champions. One-on-one to score.
Here are your hosts, Phil Baker and that other guy.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to US Rugby Happy Hour Live. It is quite the night, Fitzy. It is our annual, well, it is now our annual Major League Rugby season preview show. This is the 2025 season, which is it's the seventh? Sixth? How many seasons is it now?
Eighth.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking maybe in Free Jacks years. They weren't.
That one season, 2020, didn't really count, right? With COVID.
Oh, right.
Technically 8.
Right. Okay. Well, eighth year. It's a big year. I think, we lost a team in the last season, and we didn't gain one, but we lost one. So I guess before we've gained and lost, and so I don't know what that means. I think that's a good thing. I don't know. But what I think that means also is some of these teams got stronger from some of those Dallas players, and I really feel like we're going to dig into that a little bit tonight because all the teams we're going to be talking about, pretty much all of them, I think, has a jackal or two on their roster. So it'd be nice to talk about that. But like I just mentioned, this is the 2025 Major League Rugby season preview show. And we have not one, not two, but three guests lined up tonight. We got Rod Hammerschmidt from the Rugby Rant. He's going to talk about Chicago and NOLA Gold. We've got James Deeley from the North American Rugby Database, who will talk about Houston and Utah. And then later, Ryan Yee from the Fantasy Ruckers, also our own sports broadcaster, who will be talking three teams because he can handle it: LA, San Diego, and Seattle. Wow. And then Fitzy, you're going to be covering DC and Miami. And I've got... who do I have? New England and another team. Charlotte, obviously. Better figure that out before it's my time.
Wait, there's a new team that entered the league?
Sure, there is now. But, before we jump into that, Fitzy, there is another professional rugby league or competition here in the United States, the WER.
That's right.
They are starting to announce players. Have you been keeping track of that at all?
I have. Each market has announced their foundational 5. They've been sharing some cool graphics on social. It's been cool to see. Some big names. Yeah, and there's two at least. Unfortunately, I've been too busy today to really pay attention too much, but there have been 2 players from the PWR over in Europe who have joined the Boston Banshees. That's Emily Henrik and Paige Statopoulos. They're both from the area, and they both have been named. So that's 2 big names for one team. And that's nothing against any of the players of the other teams. There's a lot of quality rugby players out there. So I'm actually really excited about the WER. I can't wait to get out to a match. I know I don't think there's one near you, but I will say though, I do have a by the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon separation. Oh, Jetta Owens, who was named for the New York team. Her dad, who was a rugby player, was my high school wrestling coach.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So I got that going for me.
All right. Listen, we got a lot to talk about, but really quick, listeners, please like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast, which is a replay of this show, or to this live feed, which is on YouTube and Facebook right now. Share with your friends. Send out the text to them right now. We are live. We're not. This is not AI or recorded. We're doing this live, obviously. So do that. Share it with your friends, enemies, whoever else. We love talking about sports, talking about rugby. And our 3 guests tonight are the same way. They love talking about it. They're knowledgeable. They know so much about it. And we consider them friends, even though I've only met one of them in person. Actually, 2 of them in person. 3, including you.
Bill, is that a new football? Is that the 50th anniversary USA Rugby football over your shoulder?
That's funny. No, that's my Atlanta club's Old White's 50th anniversary ball from this past year.
I was going to say, Calder, where's mine?
Thanks for calling it out.
I guess that's not.
There's also an empty bottle of bourbon for the team as well, right behind my head.
Consumed responsibly, of course.
Of course. Yeah. All at once. Isn't that responsible? All right, Fitz, let's do this. Let's get going. Kick it off with this intro.
And now, the MLR 2025 preview show begins. Let's go! James Deeley, Rob Hammerschmidt, Ryan Utah Warriors, Seattle Seawolves, San Diego Legion, NOLA Gold, Houston SaberCats, Miami Sharks, Old Glory DC, Chicago Hounds, and Rugby Club, Los Angeles Rugby FC.
One more team.
And reigning champs, New England Free Jacks. Who wins it all? One really knows. Let's discuss.
All right, Fitzy, you're up, man. But before you get into your teams, let's just a couple more things I got to mention. All right, okay, that pumps you up, pumps me up quite a bit. You know, I'm pumped. Let's talk about briefly. There are new MLR trial laws coming in. The 7-point try is staying, despite everybody's objection to it. New scrum laws, and apparently this is. And I thought as well that this is pretty much behind World Rugby has initiated this as well. So give me your 2 cents real quick.
I know a lot of people are upset, particularly Fords, that it seems like it's de-emphasizing or removing scrums from Major League Rugby, and I hear those concerns. I think I don't know if that is 100% accurate. I think we need to see how this is going to play out this season. I think the biggest thing is just how fairly this will, or evenly this will be called across Major League Rugby, considering the first round starts on Saturday. Yes, the announcement was just a few days ago, but I imagine things were being implemented far before that. And, as Brian Ray and others, myself, I've chatted with a few folks behind the scenes. It's basically like, this is a trial. If it goes well, more than likely World Rugby will adopt it for other leagues, probably ahead of more rugby qualification stuff. Yeah, there's some griping about more ball and play and all that stuff. Let's see how this plays out. Let's see how it plays out.
Well, scrums
aren't going to be
wrong. Right. No, it won't. No, we're not going to be league. But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the 50-22 come from Major League Rugby trial laws? Am I wrong with that?
The kick clock, I think MLR was one of the first.
Kick clock, but I thought the 50-22, but maybe not.
Kick clock. Yeah.
All right.
Rewards
I love
attacking.
it. Yeah, and so many, like, I watch Six Nations, and you're just like, oh, it's going to go out, and whatever, and it's exciting, And quickly, a new broadcast deal. ESPN is back on board with rugby in the United States. Miami Sharks and Your Old Glory DC will kick off their broadcasting. I think it's great. It's not much different than Rugby Network, but because it still is a paid service. But there will be some games on ESPN2, which, to my point, which you mentioned with Ross Young, was having games on TV. So hopefully bars, wherever else, can put on ESPN2.
Yeah.
And a random will see that game on TV and go, wow, what's that? Let's talk about it and become fans.
I think this deal, it gets it in front of almost 26 million subscribers who already have ESPN Plus. I think it's affiliation with the big brand that is ESPN. I think ESPN needs to do more to market it.
Disney,
but
ABC.
Also, do we want to spend so many dollars on it when we've got all these other things going on right now? But I think it'll set MLR up hopefully for the next media rights deal, which actually will probably bring in revenue. I don't think this deal is bringing in any revenue at all, but it's more so just associating with ESPN. So Rugby Network's still around, which is a great thing, particularly for international viewers. But yeah, let's go.
All right, let's go. Indeed, let's dig into the 2025 Major League Rugby season. Fitzy, I want to hear you talk about DC first, or second if you want, in Miami. So go.
Yeah, let me start with Miami first. I got to say, if you're a Miami Sharks fan, you got to be thrilled about how the first season went, because inaugural season, 6-10, competitive across the entire season. Beat the Free Jacks, beat Old Glory, competitive in every game. Almost, they stayed in the playoff chase to all the way about like the final round or two. And they had a losing record, but again, first season. Just missed it out on the playoffs. I think the vibe in what they're building down there is fun. They really leaned into that whole maybe Miami Vice thing, right, with the pinks and all that great stuff. And they certainly understand the market that they are in, right? There's a very much a Spanish influence and Argentine influence, which is great because there's a number of Pumas on this roster who are good. And they've got some capped eagles, right? Like Ben Bonassa, we talked with him over a year ago or so. He talked about it, how exciting it was to play for the team, and also the belief that this team will just not give up, right? They're going to fight and scrap for everything. And I think we saw that last year. And so I think there's a lot to be excited about for this Miami team. They also picked up Ronan Foley. You mentioned the Dallas dispersal draft, so they're picking up a few more players. I think also Tomas Kobia, center for Dallas, or Kobeli joined from Dallas. So they picked up, a couple more other pieces coming out of that. They will be competing for a playoff spot. A lot of people have them competing for like that 4th spot. A lot of people are saying Old Glory, DC, Miami are going to fight for that 4th spot. I have Old Glory, DC a little bit higher. We'll get to them in a second. But at 6-10 in their inaugural season, building upon that, they did lose some players. Their center, Nick Gregg, is now with Old Glory. Hasn't officially been announced yet, but he was their leading try scorer. He's now with
that's a big loss.
Old Glory. So there's a loss there. But hey, they open up against each other in round 1. Many people have predicted Miami. I've picked Old Glory to win this one, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on Miami.
I like Miami. They had a couple upsets last year, one over the Free Jacks, obviously later in the season. They have potential. They have some quality players. It's their second year. Coaches are not, that fresh anymore. They're a little more veteran in this league. So I can see them putting a dent in the league. I think 4th is going to be right around when they are, and I do agree with you. DC is going to be a little higher. But didn't they add, who's the lock there, USA qualified lock? Short? Is that his last name? I forget.
Yeah, but they also have Rick Rose, too, I think.
Rick Rose, that's what I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Talented. Yeah. He may have gotten a little bit of a shoulder injury in that preseason match against New England. I saw a picture. I think Great American Rugby, Lance from Great American Rugby, shared that on his Instagram. Hopefully that's not nothing long-term, but he's definitely one to watch for the future.
Yeah, I don't think Miami's going to improve that much. I think they're going to be a better team, but as far as placement goes in the table, I don't really see them climbing too much higher. I think give them maybe next year as well. And, when I look at other teams making their offseason trades or moves, which we'll find out more about later in the show, I don't think they did as much as other teams did. So they're going to be a quality team. There's going to be something all the East teams and the West, of course, will need to pay attention to. There's no team in this league that's going to be a knockover this year. So with that said, let's move on to DC.
So Old Glory DC, I think this has been shared. If anyone listens to the Glorious Rugby podcast that I co-host with Alistair Kirschpool, we've had a number of conversations on and off air with the head coach Simon Cross, and he really talked about the buy-in, the continuity of players coming back, and just building upon the foundation of the last 2 years. So they made the playoffs the last 2 years, both times coming up a little bit short, losing, of course, to your New England Free Jacks in the playoffs this most recent time. In the first round of the Eastern Conference, where they lost by 4. But if you remember from the regular season last year, Old Glory went up to New England, beat New England there by 1. Yep. Very exciting match. You could contest whether or not Old Glory's DC game-winning try should have counted, but, back and forth, whatever.
Yeah.
They played again in the latter part of the end of last year. Old Glory was up by like 10, and they let the lead slip away. And it was in the closing moments, they had a chance for a driving maul to be able to score, and there was a knock on. New England ended up winning by a point there, right? So very close both times. People say it's really not a rivalry because one side's been dominating, at least in the win column, but like each match is intense. You can tell the guys want it. I really do think it's a budding rivalry. They have made a couple of picks, and that's the other thing. I think a lot of people aren't so high on Old Glory because they looked at the record last year, and there were 2 draws. They tied Chicago and they tied RTLA. Yeah. And the funniest thing is both those draws, the final score was 22-22 for both of them. So first of all, 2 draws random. From both to end 22-22 is the final score.
Two are wild. Yeah.
So they 7 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws, so still not a winning record. They've made some improvements defensively. That's been the focus for Simon Cross. They have brought in Jason Emery, center, who was RFCLA. He, I think, is going to bring a little more dynamic play to that back line, and also a little bit more of that coaching, that veteran leadership, and they can kind of move him around. He's more of a utility back. I'm excited what he's going to do. And Steph Hughes is probably their biggest signing. He came from the URC from the Dragons. Simon Cross is quoted as saying Steph Hughes is one of the best defensive centers he's ever seen. And I think what we saw last year in particular is that Old Glory DC may have kind of been getting exploited a little bit on the edge, and I think that's because there were some breakdowns in the midfield. I think with Hughes out there, who's been named vice captain, Tommaso Boni, again, capped Eagle. He's one of 5 capped Eagles on Old Glory DC. Jack Ascaro, Corey Daniel, Jamison Fontanana Schultz, Ethan McVie. You also have Connor Buckley, who's on that wider pool. I mean,
Eagles. Yeah.
There's a lot of guys there, a lot of Eagles there. They're exciting. I think we are going to see, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by Old Glory. Now, I will say there is a good risk that they may start the season off a little slow. And I say that because last year they didn't have any preseason games. Same for this year. No preseason. They were concerned about injuries. So what happened round 1 last year, they went down to Nola Gold, lost like 21 to like 6 or something, scored no tries. And everyone's like, well, maybe you should have had a preseason game. So you do set yourself up for that if you go down to Miami and you lay a stinker because you didn't have a preseason game. I think it'll be different this time. I think Old Glory will surprise people. I think they have a real chance here to get a bonus point victory against Miami. And maybe RCLA shocks the world and beats New England. We'll find out.
Maybe. I like LA. I don't really have anything else to add with DC except that I do love their pack. A lot of Eagles in there, and Corey Daniel and others, and had great 2024s with the Eagles. So they won't be. They're going to be a good team, and they're going to give Free Jacks a fit again as usual. So Fitzy, good job with those 2 teams. But 2 questions for you. Give me your top 2 teams in the East and top 2 in the West at the end of the season.
I'll go on the West first. I think it's Houston, and then I think it's going to come down to either Seattle or San Diego, and I'll give the edge to San Diego. Maybe some question marks about San Diego, who their fly half is going to be. I am concerned for Seattle, the loss of Mac Mason. I think that they're going to feel that quite a bit. In the East, I really do think the East is much stronger than the West this year, top to bottom. Again, more teams in the East. So 2 teams are going to miss out on the playoffs. Only 1 team is going to miss out in the West. I think the gap between New England and everyone else is closing and getting narrower. Chicago, we're going to talk with Rob in a second. Chicago improved. That back line is scary. Nola Gold, they improved. Rob's got to pick which team he's going to cheer for. That's just a joke. and DC. So I think New England, everyone's chasing New England. I still think they're the top team in right now going into the regular season. And then I call it a coin flip between Chicago, Nola Gold, and DC for that 2nd seed. Okay.
And out of that, who wins it all? That's always an easy one to answer.
Houston versus, I'm going to go Old Glory DC. How about that? Boom.
Wow. So Old Glory, 25 MLR champs.
I mean, why not? Roll the dice. Why not?
It won't hurt to say it. It's okay. There's no money lost right now unless you put money on the game.
Putting my mortgage payment on there. So
mortgage. All right, great stuff, Fitzy. Time to move on to our first beautiful mind of rugby who's joining us tonight. He's going to discuss 2 teams just briefly mentioned, the Chicago Hounds and Nola Gold. And they had a lot of moves in the offseason. He'll talk about this in a second. So let's welcome Rugby Rant's Rob Hammerschmidt. Hey, Rob.
Hey, gentlemen, what is shaking with your bacon these days?
You know what? I want to say you, but I don't think that sounds right. That's
my wife might be a little concerned if she hears this.
Rob, actually, I got a question related to bacon. Do you prefer your bacon chewy or crunchy, or both?
Crunchy.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a chewy bacon guy. I like it slightly undercooked.
I get that. But yeah, I'm a crunchy fan. Although I don't like my peanut butter crunchy, so figure that shit out. No.
Well, the Hammer, man, how you been? It's been a while. I think I ran into you 2 years ago. I haven't seen you since, or maybe I have. I don't know. Saw you in Chicago at one point.
Yeah, 2 years ago, New England won, and I've been gun shy ever since. So stay in my little corner of the universe. No, it was great to run into you then, and I can't wait to run into you in real life one more, or at least one more time, maybe more
soon.
But yeah, soon. It's been good. Things have been good. Rugby Rant's doing good, and things in Chicago are good. So I can't complain at all. If I did, nobody would care.
Well, Rob, we love the show, but we're not. Well, we'll talk about the show a little bit too. But we're here to talk to you about Chicago. I can't talk. Chicago Hounds and Nola Gold. Who do you want to start with?
Well, I'm wearing Chicago here. Sorry, I'm wearing Chicago here right now. So let's talk about the Chicago Hounds. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy of these 2 teams, and I'll start first with Chicago. Number one, I want to just lay this out to people. I don't know if everybody totally understands just how committed this ownership is to winning. Peter Burnick and Matt Satchwell and and Phil Groves, this ownership group really, really, really wants to win. And I know everybody else wants to win. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But they are putting resources behind this. Okay. As a matter of fact, I just saw a post recently amongst the fan group. There's actually a viewing going on, and I think it's actually the first episode of the Hounds docuseries that was in the making from last year. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. I'm just going off what I'm seeing on social media, but I think that could be the vibe. But that gives you an idea of just what Peter is willing to do to get rugby to be successful here in Chicago. Added to that, I know Peter and Matt were in the UK recently, and what they're really trying to do is demonstrate that Chicago is a city, the Hounds is a team that represents rugby in America, and that Chicago should be one of those cities that Europeans think of when they think of rugby. So one of the keys to that, I know, is for them to win a Shield. They want to do that to make sure that they solidify Chicago's place. They've added, and it's demonstrated, by the way, USA versus Romania was brought here, and that was in big part due to the effort of the Chicago Hounds and Peter Burnick and crew. They've done a lot of stuff with their fan group, really trying to keep in touch with the fan base and really make them part of the effort. And then, of course, they've added some staff. And one of the notables, and it may seem like a subtle difference, is a nutritionist. I spoke with Lauren a couple weeks ago when I was at a training session. And that's just one of those subtleties that I think, when you hear that being said, you understand the level to which an ownership is committed and willing to put money behind an effort when they're hiring a nutritionist to work with each and every player to make sure that they're maximizing their abilities on the field by putting good food in their body. So that's important. They've added new staff, of course. I mentioned Lauren as a nutritionist, but also, the ticketing and the commerce department. They've done a lot of stuff to build with the business community here, especially Guinness Open Gate, which is a new brewery down in the south. It's the South Loop area, so that's pretty cool. TV broadcast partnerships with Clark Street, which is going to be their merch distributor here in Chicago, so that they're going to have a presence in the storefronts, in Michigan Avenue and a lot of other places. And then, of course, they brought in two new coaches. Todd Dammers, an assistant coach, and then, of course, World Cup winning Wallaby Chris Latham. So it just gives you an idea of where this ownership is at in terms of their commitment.
But you haven't even talked about players yet. I'm already picking them to win the whole damn thing. They're going to win the whole damn thing.
Boy, I sure, it would be great to see. It really would. I can't deny it. Yeah. I mean, I'm Robbie two teams, and if either one of my two teams win, I'd be happy and be loving life. It doubles my pleasure and doubles my fun. But I think that they're taking the right steps. They're making the right moves in just their third year. But we mentioned the players, and here's the deal. I'm going to be real honest. If there is a window, it's now.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I say that is I think they have some players that are their veteran foundation. And I don't mean this disrespectfully to any of those players, but there are players that are getting in the back end of their careers. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, if you're going to make a claim to that shield, this is the time you do it with those players, not only leading on the front foot, guys like Nate Osberger, who just puts his body on the line at 34 years old every time he goes out to put on the jersey, whether it's an Eagles jersey or a Hounds jersey. Talking about Dylan Fawcett, who will be the MLR's most cap. Well, he's the most cap player, but he'll reach 100 caps here very shortly. Guys like Patty Ryan, guys like Luke White, Rumball, Julian Dominguez. I mean, Julian Dominguez, this man, watching from the sidelines when I do, there is nobody that wears his heart on a sleeve more than Julian. And that's not a disrespect to anybody else in that pitch. I'm just telling you the level to which he plays the game. I've literally seen the man just put his body on the line, come off in absolute tears because he had to go out, because of injury, and he didn't feel like he did enough to help his team. That's the kind of mentality we're talking about. Guy like Maka Jones, who had the second in the most tackles of any player, who's in his third season for the Hounds. And I don't know that the man gets injured, right? Which is the impressive thing about my guy Maka, who I have his original Hounds jersey. But so then you add into that, you have guys like Hamish Bain, who comes with a Scottish background, U20s, and the Scottish 15s at the second row, an area where they needed some bolstering because of the exit of Ben Landry, a true hard man in USA Rugby. They need to bolster that, and I think they did with Hamish. Ali DeVito, of course, comes with a couple of English caps, Exeter, Bath Premiership experience. Tim Swell, again, Currie Cup. I mean, he's one of those crossover guys that played in a lot of different leagues, not only in South Africa, England, and Japan. So he comes with a ton of experience in a lot of other leagues. Michael Hand, who they got back from Miami, who's a 6'4", like 240-pound winger.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you add in a guy like Noah Brown, on the wing too, and they've got 4 really solid wings. Then you got like Liam Fletcher, who comes with a ton of experience from Queensland, the Western Force, Australia U20s, and Pifoletti, of course, a Legion, a couple of caps with the Eagles, and Mitch Short, who's bolstered their number 9 position. I think that's a key. The key for the Hounds, in my mind, is that 9-10 combo. Let's be honest. Last year, that was the big question mark that really caused them problems in the middle of the season. That's what Sam had difficulty with, and that's why Sam is no longer their head coach, because he just couldn't get that combo right. And they have Jason Higgins still there. Like I said, they have Mitch Short, and then they have Michael Baska in there as well in the mix. But then at 10, they played Carlisi. They, of course, they played Billy Meeks and Carlisi, and then they finally put Cardi in, and they got the formula right to win that, semifinal against the Nola Gold. With McCarthy gone, with Cardi down in Nola, who's going to be that 9-10 combo that's going to really command that back line and marshal those forwards from the back of the scrum and the back of the maul? That's one of my big questions that I have. Is a 9-10 combo. They have to get that right.
What's your take on Noah? Is this his year to really break out and really make a bigger impact on the team?
I'd say absolutely. If he didn't have Nate Augsburger, Julian Dominguez, and Michael Anderson there.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's one of those things where I think there's going to be pressure from ownership to play Noah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying bad pressure. I'm just saying I think they're gonna say we got to see what we have in this kid, because he is a special talent. He really is. I think he scored one of the best tries, single individual effort tries last season, when he went through about 3 guys and then just used his lightning quicks to get across that try line and score one. He's a hell of a player. But he's got some great players in front of him too. So it'll be interesting to see how that story plays itself out.
Well, I agree with everything you said prior about the ownership group and all. I love the stadium. Been there a few times. Chicago right now is my second favorite team of any MLR team, not just to win or go far in the league. I just love what they've been doing. So great job with Chicago. Let's move on to NOLA.
Okay, hold on.
No.
He's going to do a jersey swap.
Jersey change. Fitzy, any thoughts about Chicago? Oh, okay. Here we go.
All right. I'm ready. Okay.
We're ready.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. I'm ready to go. All right.
No, voice change. Voice change.
Me. So Nola's an interesting one. I think there are some similarities between the Nola Gold and the Hounds, in the sense we have a new coaching staff in place that have to establish their culture and their identity and kind of stamp that on the team to see how they play. And both coaches have spent at least a season or 2 in the league, and so they know kind of what the MLR standard is, and they know what the MLR experience is like, and I think that'll really help both teams. The other thing I think is similar is who's their, well, not so much the 9, because I think Luke Campbell is going to be the well-established 9. He was last year. I think he's a hell of a player. I think he brings a skill set, a sniping skill set. And I think physically he's a little bit bigger than Damian Stevens, and therefore I think he's better on defense than Damian. Then it's no disrespect to Damian. He's a hell of a player. But I think Luke Campbell brings that defensive piece. But the big question is at 10. who's going to be their 10? They lost Rodney Iona, who's up in Seattle now. So who's going to be their number 10? And so, they've got a couple of guys in the that are sitting there, and you're talking about, Cardi, of course, came from the Hounds, Dorian Jones, who was there last year, and Reese Botha. And they're kind of interesting. They're interesting combos there because Luke Cardi, I love Luke. I think he has a great skill set. He can control a game with his boot. I think he's crafty. I think he has good vision. I don't know that he has the explosiveness of a guy like Reese Botha, or even sometimes we've seen out of Dorian Jones. The big question mark out of Dorian Jones is injury. He's somewhat injury prone, so I don't know if he's that reliable piece necessarily. And then you've got a young guy in both of that. I know him well. I know his folks very well. And he's a great kid, and a big part of me would like to see him get the keys to the engine and see how he runs it. So that's a big question. Keep in mind, and I don't want to go back too far away from the playing, but again, going to ownership, all of the NOLA Gold has been changed over to some degree at the very top. They have some core leaders in that playing group. But at the very top, you have a whole new not a whole new ownership, but you have a whole new ownership structure. You have a new GM. Fitz is still there. He's kind of taken more of a director of community engagement role. And then, of course, you have Danny Lee at the helm. I think the world of Danny Lee. I think he's one of those guys that really embraces culture, really knows how to get the most out of it, knows how to get the most out of players. I was miffed as to why he was shown an exit from the Legion after having so many successful seasons. That being said, what was he missing? What do they think that they were going to bring in with a guy like Menenti? And no disrespect to John, I think he's a hell of a coach, and I can't wait to see what he does. I'm just saying, like, the grass is always, the grass is always greener, but is it? And I just don't know. So I'll be interested to see what he does. A great core, Dolan, Duplessis, Moni Tungawea, like I said, Luke Campbell, Matt Harmon, Pat O'Toole, William Wegspack. So they've got a great core. They added some really nice pieces. A little bit of the concern for me is, again, with the age of some of those pieces, like Keelan Gaultier, a Cap French international, but he's 33. At 31 is Xavier Mignon. Again, a French international, comes from a pedigree from, Pro 14 with Leon. But again, he's 31 years old. Are these guys one and dones, or are they committed to, to really making an effort here in a 2 or 3 year process? Cooper Coates, a couple of Canadians here, Caden DeGuide, and then a Tongan Nikolai Folicki. Here are my concerns with the NOLA Gold. The losses. It's not who they picked up, it's who they lost. I don't know if you guys understand this. Of the 60 tries they scored, 1/3 are gone from the team.
Yeah.
Wow.
Philemone.
19 of, and that's just in 3 guys. There are a couple other guys that are no longer with the team that add to that tally, but 19 of 60 tries. So Philemone is playing in Super League. Iona's off in Seattle, and then Jordan Jackson Hope is injured and will be out for the season. You're talking about Philemone with the second most carries with 115, Ione with 86 carries, 48 points, who was third on the team, and then Jordan Jackson Hope with 30.6 tries. Those things are not easy to replace, and I think that's going to be a challenge. So who's going to step up and fill that gap of 20 to 25 tries that have left this roster? And that's my big question with the NOLA Gold.
Well, Rob, there's one name you haven't mentioned at all is Ruben DeHaas, or at least I might have missed it early on. Does he make an immediate impact on this team?
I'll be interested to see how Danny uses him. One of the things that Scott has always talked about is he thinks, and don't get me wrong, Ruben is probably the most athletic 9 in the league. he might be one of the most athletic nines. I've seen him do stuff in an Eagles jersey that you just are left with your jaw on the floor. But his, he's very much that South African mentality. We're going to box kick and we're going to box kick. Now, if you put it in the right areas, you can put it in that 15-meter channel. You can really pin somebody back. And if you have a quality chase, like Ed Fideau is that quality chase. My question is, can Ed play 16 games for the NOLA Gold this season? He was injured quite a bit last season. But if you can get a quality chase and put pressure on that high ball, then it's a great strategy. I don't know how many teams are really super proficient at that. I think that New England does it really, really well, but not a whole lot of teams do. And so can you use that and maximize that skill set? But no question, Ruben is one hell of a player.
Rob, let's ask you here, who are your top two teams in the East and the West, and then who's going to win it? Quick fire.
Yeah, quick fire. Right. So, well, I got to be honest. I'm never going to count a guy like Clarkey out.
Yeah,
I'm never going to count him out. I just think he does such a great job, and they have a good veteran group in there that he doesn't have to work hard to establish what he expects and what he wants. That process is carried out by the boys, guys like Reichert Hadding and JP Smith, and guys like Danny Creel, etc. So I just gotta say Seattle. I can't count them out. That'd be one. And another one, I'm going to go out and throw a little curveball out here. I know it's going to be LA. I think if they can get the forwards running the right way, their back line is devastating. And they've got a combo at the midfield, and the names escape me right now. I just haven't seen enough of them play out.
Jansen.
Yeah, exactly. That I think they were both at Renwick, and they won a shoot together. And so you're talking about guys that already have developed a really good, cohesion between the two of them. Where do you put Billy Meeks? Hopefully Sam Harris, because that's where he's at, doesn't put him at 10. But they have a pretty good 10 in Christian Leafau. I pronounced that.
Don't ask me to spell it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Leafano. Yeah, they have a pretty good 10 in him too. So, but I think those are three good centers that you've got working there. Plus, you've got a great 10, and then they got another kid like a Manu, or I forgot the last name, or Mono, but he's like a 6'3", 240, 245 pound winger. So that's dangerous when you put him into space. So I think their back line can get humming pretty quick. And then of course Reese McDonald at 15, right?
Yep.
Who's just an attacking threat from anywhere on the pitch. So if they can get their forwards running right, I could see them being a number 2 team coming out of the West. The East, is a little tougher row. It's kind of like the Patrick Mahomes. Everybody was like, I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes anymore. It's hard to bet against New England, right? They have a new coaching change, and my only hesitation would be that Ryan has talked about putting on kind of a different brand of rugby on the pitch. They're going to do some different things with kicking. He mentioned it in a recent interview that I was involved with, that, because they play 8 games on turf, so at least 8 and probably more, because you're going to play down there in DC. They have turf too. That they're going to use a little different kicking game to their advantage. So one of the interesting things is, can that be established early on in the season so they don't get put behind the 8 ball? But I think they're a good enough, veteran enough squad that's not a concern for New England fans. I don't think you can count them out. I would be stupid to say your 2-time reigning champions won't be one of your top 2 coming out of the East. Although I hope they're not. So, and then it's a question of for me, it's really a question of honestly between the Hounds and NOLA Gold, and
Chicago.
Robbie, 2 teams is struggling with this one. Kind of like I have 2 boys, and I love them both, and I love them for
we won't make you
different
pick
reasons.
them. We won't make you pick.
But I think you got to look at either one of those teams coming out. I mean, my only hesitation on either one is just a new coaching staff, and can they get everybody running in the right direction with very little preseason going to really get the start off. And I you know what, John, I love Fitzy, what you're doing in DC. I really do, because I talked with Simon, and there is an emphasis by both the ownership as well as the coaching staff on American players. I mean, one of my favorites, Bill Whiteside. I love that kid so much. He's such a great kid. And of course, Connor McManus, I think, is really starting to get the time he deserves. But my concern is that they're still young. They're still a little too American. And as much as I hate saying that, but I just got to be honest. And
do they need to be more Canadian, like the Free Jacks? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
hey, it works.
The madness in the mix, and I part of getting that right. But it comes down to minutes, right? When you're talking about aggregate minutes played, and I just think they're a bit behind the eight ball. I can only think back to the opening match last year between NOLA and Old Glory, and Old Glory I think was up at half. And one of the comments, because I was on the commentary for that particular match, one of the comments that I said is, as I said, I really think in the second half it's going to come down to the NOLA Gold and their experience, and just the fact that they just have guys that have more minutes, and they've been in those pressure situations, and that's a difference maker. So that's why Scott Lawrence talks about managing minutes and making sure that players out of college have proper minutes and are getting enough quality minutes in the 15s game. That's why he's talking about that.
All right, Rob, we got to jump forward. We're behind. Real quick, pick to win it all.
I forgot about Houston, didn't I?
Yes. We're moving forward, though.
What a mistake! What a mistake that was. I'm gonna.
It's okay.
You got to go with favorite New England.
Yeah.
You got to go with favorite New England. I'm going to put a curse on him by taking him.
By doing that. All right, really quickly also, we're going to see you on the sidelines this year with the mic.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, all 8 games I'm in. Should be great. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. They open up next week against Utah in week 2. I'm excited, although it's going to be colder than probably colder than it was in Toronto 2 years ago.
Yeah. All right, everybody, please check out the Rugby Rant. Every week you guys do a show. It's online everywhere. Rob Hammerschmidt, thank you so much.
Thanks, gents. Peace.
Thanks,
Good luck
Cheers.
this season.
Thank you, too. All right, moving on. We're going to jump forward. I'm going to skip me for a second. We got one of our other guests right here waiting patiently. So let's get to James. Actually, I'm looking for his introduction. I just got to get to his real introduction, okay? I got to get this right. Next up, to talk about the Houston SaberCats and Utah Warriors, MLR stats guru and curator of the North American Rugby Database, James Deeley, a regular on the show. Well, regular whenever we get you on the show.
Hi, guys. How you doing, Fitzy? How you doing, Bill?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Oh, no, my pleasure. I'm doing pretty well. We're in the middle of like Rob was saying, probably warmer than Toronto. We're in the middle of a massive blizzard up here at the minute. So just, typical Canadian things in Toronto.
Well, don't worry. You'll be the 52nd, whatever state soon. Anyway, no more politics. So, James, let's jump into it. You got Houston and Utah. Which one to start with?
Sure. I'm going to start with Houston that Rob so kindly forgot about then. I think Houston's season really revolves around kind of 2 questions. And the first of that is exactly how much impact did Henneke Meyer have on this team? If you look at the history of the SaberCats, they were 10-25 before Henneke Meyer took over in fact, no, they were 10-35 before Henneke Meyer took over in following the 2021 season.
Yeah, make sure you get your win-loss percentage right there, James.
Well,
or your non-loss rate, right?
Someone's going to do it. I don't know what the hell that was about. Since Meyer took over and kind of steered this ship around with a healthy South African contingent, they have gone 33-15 in those previous 3 seasons, qualifying for the postseason every single year, and in fact improving the amount of wins season on season. They finished with a league best 14-2 last year, their best ever their best ever finish. They're really getting close to actually having an overall winning record, which they haven't done in their history. Possibly this season, we'll see if they can match that 14-2 season they had last year. The issue is Maya's now gone. A lot of the team are still there from the 2024 season, and as is Pote Human, the head coach. So, on paper, it doesn't look like they're going to take that much of a step back, but we don't know. It's going to take some doing to improve on a 14-2 regular season. Which brings me to my second question: is the postseason for the Sabercats? They've qualified the last 3 seasons in a row. They have not won a playoff game. That includes a shock defeat to this Dallas Jackals last season, which was probably the game of the season, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can they figure it out for the postseason? The Dallas Jackals aren't in their way anymore, unfortunately. But they're going to have to face the likes of San Diego, Seattle, possibly LA. There's going to be no easy way for them to do it. And the team is pretty much the same. But there have been a couple of big departures, such as the likes of Christian Dyer, their top try scorer. He's now with LA, so that's a conference rival there. Gideon Van Wyk, who was a monster when he was playing, is now with the South Africa Sevens team. He's no longer with the Sabercats.
Their development team, not even the blitz box, right? Anyway,
not even the blitz box. No, he's in the program, but well, he's still quite young, but we'll see where he goes.
I was hoping he was going to stick around so he could be U.S. quality.
Yeah, anyway. he was a good.
Right.
I'm not surprised. The thing that the Houston Sabercats must have liked the Dallas Jackals quite a lot, because they did pick up a few Jackals in the dispersal draft, such as Juan D. Oliver, who is South African. Go figure. But he was fantastic when he was playing against the Sabercats in that playoff game. They've also picked up Sam Tuifua from the Jackals, who is like Gideon Van Wyk, to be honest, a bit of a monster in the back row.
Absolutely.
So, and not even mentioning Wilton Robolo, who they picked up from LA, the Brazilian international and MLR veteran. I think that the new additions actually at least plug the gap from their departures. And like I said, a lot of the team is back. I think they're possibly, with the exception of Ogler at DC, they have the most kind of consistency from 2024 to 2025 in terms of returning players. One sort of small question I have is who's going to start at 10? And it's a good problem for the Sabercats to have, in that they have David Coetzer and AJ Elatimu. Now, at fullback, they're probably going to start Drew Wild more often than not. So that really depends on who is starting in this most likely tandem that they had in 2024. Coetzer expressed his interest in eventually becoming US eligible. If he's, if Sabercats are smart, they'll be saying, well, okay, so he might be a US eligible player. We might want to, improve him, get him some more game time. And AJ Elatimu is, at the other end of his career, to put it politely. But it's a good problem for the Sabercats to have. I think there's not that many worrying questions. Possibly, the two I brought up at the start were kind of in the back of the mind. But I think in a game-to-game basis, there's not that much concern. You have kind of spoiled for choice with a lot of the Sabercats roster.
Mm-hmm. Now, AJ played a little bit of center too a couple of years ago, so there's a little bit of flexibility if they want to get both get Davey and AJ and Drew all on the field together. So certainly some options there, but it's certainly a great problem to have on who's going to put on the number 10 each week.
Oh yeah,
you're right, Fitzy, he did, but the Sabercats are also pretty strong at center. The likes of Loritz van der Schijf, Sam Hill, Tautala Tassi, and Dom Aquino.
Yeah.
Among others. But where is AJ Elatimu going to fit in? Who are you going to take out to put him in there? I don't know. That's a question for Pote Human.
All right, so good stuff with Houston. I don't know. I'm not sold on them. I maybe I didn't pay attention to them much in the offseason, but my initial thought was, no way, bottom dwellers. But then between you and Rob, I'm thinking, okay, this could be a quality team next year, even
No,
though
they
they're
went
losing those
14
players.
last year. What do you mean? They're not.
They topped the league last year and have barely changed the team.
They lost Christian Dyer.
Well, it's funny though, because if you listen to Christian Dyer, I think he was he departed from Houston because I don't feel like their game plan necessarily suited.
For
he
him,
didn't get the ball
personally.
enough. I think he's.
Yeah.
I think there's the potential he's going to see the ball a lot more in LA, where I think we're going to see the old Christian Dyer again, the attacking Christian Dyer, which I think we're excited about. So yeah.
Well, I'm excited about them. They also have one of my favorite stadiums to play in, and they're stalwart in this league. And I keep going. I like Seth Smith. I can't wait for that kid to just improve more and more every year. So I'm excited about them. So let's move on to Utah, James.
Right. Well, I think this is probably going to be at the other end of things for the Utah Warriors.
Really?
Unfortunately for Utah fans, I think this is more of a continuation of what we saw last year, which is pretty much just tearing everything down and building it up. I think is Greg Cooper's second season, maybe his third, off the top of my head. He's really starting to put his plan into effect. Now, I don't know if it's a 3-year plan, 5-year plan, what's going on, but I'm not entirely sure that they're in win now mode. Mm-hmm. They did, unfortunately for them, they lost their by far and away best player of 2024. I have been banging the drum pretty much since the season ended that he had a great case for player of the year in 2024, Michael Manson.
Yeah.
14 tries in 12 games, like 30 meters gained less than Reece McDonald in something like 6 less games. Absolute monster, lightning quick, try machine, and unsurprisingly, he had a Super Rugby contract. My understanding is he was signed for Utah for this season, but Super Rugby came knocking.
Can't blame him.
Yeah, you go. Yeah.
Yeah, you go when Super Rugby calls. Yes, absolutely, for sure. Now, the good news for Warriors fans is they did bring back some of their other standouts from 2024, like Frank Lacroix, who was one of only 2 players over 200 tackles in 2024, along with Corey Daniel, who was another 50 ahead of him, like league of his own up there. Dylan Nell, who I thought was very, very impressive, is the only second player ever to record 30 tackles in a single game.
I think I made 30 tackles in my career. Or attempted.
The Warriors did have to make quite a lot of tackles in 2024. But they did bring back some of those standouts. They've got a couple of kind of quite big names that are joining them. Gabe Casey, who was one of the very few players who have been drafted into MLR twice, but didn't get much of a shot with the Free Jacks. So they only played in 1 game. You've got Logan Crowley, which is an interesting one, the son of former Canada head coach Kieran Crowley. He was actually signed for 2024, but didn't come over for whatever reason. Then they've got Fred Apulu, who's familiar to MLR names. They've got a few Dallas Jackals. Ronnie, most teams this season, unfortunately, have a few Dallas Jackals. Ronnie McElligott and Nick Benn, former Toronto Arrow. Nick Benn to go along with a few Arrows, actually. Sam Reimer was a former Arrow. Tyler Wong is hooker, former Arrow. They still have some good pieces, but they are still quite young, generally speaking. And they brought in a lot of new players that haven't played together before, which is a bit of an issue. Might take them a few weeks to actually get up to speed with playing together, which isn't helped by the fact that they have a bye in round 1.
No.
Which sucks for Utah fans, that's for sure.
What was it? Bye in round 1? Oh, that's right. Odd numbers.
Odd numbers, unfortunately, yeah. So I just think that, they weren't that impressive. They were entertaining. I'm not going to take that away from them. They were entertaining in 2024, but not really impressive very much. And they started this offseason by kind of ripping the Band-Aid off with announcing 17 players leaving.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which Utah fans were like, what the hell's going on here? Now, that's kind of blown over because they've announced who's coming in. But, I haven't even mentioned the likes of Nick Souchon, who Fitzy will know from Old Glory, and Caleb McInerney.
Yep.
Who's another, I think was part of the leadership group, stand out at fullback. Did sign with NOLA, but then decided to stay in New Zealand for the birth of his child, which I guess is fair enough. So, I just don't think that the Utah Warriors have it this year, unfortunately. And with only 5 teams in the West getting in the playoffs, I'm not sure they're going to be in it.
Well, James, think about it.
Yeah.
Paul Asike, can they rely on him, game in, game out? Or he's an older player. He's oft injured because of his playing style. Is he going to make an impact?
Well, you've just kind of answered the question for me, I think, there, Bill. He's often injured. He's 30. Yeah. He's going to be 35 midway through the season, I think. He's a fantastic player. And I'm sure he can teach the younger guys a hell of a lot. But I don't think they can rely on him week in, week out. Like you said, his kind of very physical kind of game lends itself to injury, unfortunately. And I'm not sure you can. I think probably if he's fit, you probably start him. But that's quite a big if. Like, how often is he going to be fit? I think you need other bodies to either play alongside him and kind of take some of that impact off of him, or to step in and fill the gap when, hopefully, if he's not able to play.
I think of. I love him. I always loving seeing him playing when he played for Harlequins or else over here. But he reminds me of a 10-year-old boy on a bicycle who goes off of ramps, crashes into trees, does everything to get hurt. That's just the way he plays. James, let's wrap it up. Give us your 2 top teams in the East and your 2 top teams in the West.
Sure. So I think the Houston SaberCats are going to top the Western Conference again for pretty much every reason I said earlier. They finished top of the league in the regular season in 2024. They've barely changed the team at all. I think they're going to be the team to beat in the West. As for who finishes, who fights with them for that top spot, it's really kind of like a 3-way battle, I think, between San Diego, Seattle, and LA. Like Rob was saying earlier, it really depends on how quickly and how effectively LA can kind of get these pieces working, because they, on paper, vast improvement, a very Giltinis-themed improvement. But will they be able to get it to work in time for to mount a serious attack on the Western Conference during the regular season? I think they'll probably qualify, but where will that place be? I don't know if they're going to be able to earn a home field advantage in one of those top 2 spots. I would probably have to say Seattle, the Seawolves, just because they finished second in the Western Conference last year, despite a load of injuries. 3 weeks into the season, they had to announce, oh, by the way, these 4 players are out for the year, or whatever it was, including Rickard Hatting. They have a fit Hatting this year. They have a fit Devin Short this year, who only came in and played the last couple of games. I really think that Seattle, assuming they don't get hit by the injury bug again, can challenge for that Western Conference. Now, they've never actually finished atop the Western Conference before, so I'm basing myself on history there, but I think it will be between Houston or Seattle for the West.
Okay, and who wins it all? All of it.
Who wins it all? Well, again, like I said, for Houston, until they prove they can win in the postseason, I'm not going to assume they can. Quite a boring answer, I suppose, is to go with the team that's proven before and say the Free Jacks. They are the team to beat 3 seasons in a row atop of the Eastern Conference, 2 Shields in a row. They're the team to beat. If the target wasn't big enough last season, it's the size of
definitely
the moon this year. They are the team to beat. They have done it. They've been dominant over the last really 3 seasons, apart from that shock playoff loss 3 years ago.
New York.
They are the model for an MLR team.
Well, James Deeley, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, check out the North American Rugby Database. James is the MLR stats guru, or we call him the guru, either way. James, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Good to come on again.
All right, cheers. Get warm.
Cheers.
All right, with that said, moving on, I'm going to jump in with mine too, and then we can get to our next guest because he has the West Coast, and they're up later than we are. So I'm jumping with my 2 teams. What's your name, Fitzy? You ready for this?
No, I'm Bill Baker.
I'm going to start with Charlotte. I almost said Charlotte Hornets, which is odd. Charlotte Anthem, Rugby Anthem, in Charlotte, as I just said. With me covering the Eagles quite a bit overseas, I love this team. I really do, and I'm cheering for them quite a bit. I believe 31 USA eligible players on their roster this year, and they did a lot of new signings in the offseason. And they brought in more Eagles, more capped Eagles, to help out with the younger guys who are eligible Eagles. Mitch Wilson from New England, Connor Mooneyham from Seattle, Sam Gola from Dallas, Junior Gaffa, who was with Anthem last year, basically on loan from New England, but now he's full-time, Anthem player. Had a great year last year. Makeen Alicon, LA via Dallas in that route. USA eligible. He hasn't capped yet, but he's just a powerful back rower. Jared Luda, from Houston, fullback, fly half. I think he's a quality player. And then you look at their pack, their front row. I think they really established that. They already have who's our guy there who was on our show, the big dude. Hold on, I'll get there. The big prop.
Jake.
What? Turbo. Thank you. Thanks, man. You just anyway. Add Alex Mon with him. You got a great front row. Another big prop in Mike Grandy. So they added a lot of quality players. Grandy had some experience with Glendale as well. He has 1 cap with the USA. Going back to Monty, he has 5 caps. Again, with Sosefo and Turnbull, he really strengthens that front row. Sam Gola, I think he's a huge a draw for them in the pack. 23 Rookie of the Year, so he's got a lot of experience. I love Connor Mooneyham. I do think he's going to have a great season with this team and with the USA coaching. Also, first pick in MLR history right there. Finally healthy. So happy for him.
I thought he played really well in that November series too, by the way.
Absolutely.
Strong in the air and just, bigger presence on the wing, yeah.
Yeah, and he was waiting for that chance to get healthy and perform at that level, and he's finally there. Hopefully he stays healthy. And going back to Mitch Wilson, he has 10 caps for the Eagles. Must have been a tough decision to leave the Free Jacks to go to Charlotte, or not. Eagles might have been his thing. It's like, listen, I'm doing well here. We got World Cup coming up in a couple of years. I need to perform well with them. Now, looking at the draft that they had, the 24 draft, Eric Storty, first overall pick. I'm not sure when he's going to join the team. He's on the roster. I know he's still in school or he's finishing up school, but he's already playing well with the USA sides. Neil Traynor is a great hooker, a first-round pick. U.S. born, also the highest drafted Canadian in MLR history, even though he's U.S. born. I don't know how that works. Jaron Panter, first-round pick it was DC's pick for them. Nice fullback. See how he works out. And LaDon Mathis, a big lock from Lindenwood, who was New England's second pick that they sent to the Anthem for that pick. So a lot of quality players in this team.
Staples, a wing.
Absolutely.
Who I think he looked really good in that MLR Rising documentary.
Yeah, right. So you look at that roster, there's a lot of quality players. A lot of players with not a lot of experience also. So we'll see what happens. And I feel like last year they lost some players that just, were good, but maybe not a fit in the mold as far as Scott Lawrence and Aramis in that team. So I think Charlotte will actually win games this year, more than one. Who it comes against? Probably DC, but that's just my thought right now. Because no, okay. So I really do think they're going to be much improved. A few wins at least with this quality team right here, and hopefully that equals into much more better performance when they take the field in a USA uniform. Now, New England Free Jacks, obviously, in my mind, what I've read online, everything else, and what I've seen personally, they've made a lot of signings in the offseason.
Yep.
I'm not going to put a lot of weight into the losing to Miami in this preseason because it's a preseason game.
They did that last year too.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with the coaching staff. Rob mentioned it. Ryan Martin just is back with the team back in 2021. But they added an assistant coach in DeWald Senecal, who's one of rugby's most promising young coaches right now, has so much experience playing around the world. A strong forwards coach for an already strong forwards group of this team. And if you look at the team, the players, look in that pool, the players they lost, Reese is a big loss. Reese McDonald's going to be a big loss to this team. He was so fast, so So quick everywhere, just a great player and a great guy to talk to after the matches. And I mentioned Mitch Wilson and then Junior Gaffa. So that's the only three I'm going to actually mention as leaving the team. Now, they did sign a bunch of players in the offseason, and I want to mention forwards first. Joe Johnson's back. He was with the team a year or two ago. USA qualified. I don't know if he's interested in that or not. Back then, Gary Gold tried, I believe, to get him into the mix. He did not. They did sign this giant 6'7" lock, Sam Caird. He's at Super Rugby experience with the Waratahs and Highlanders and NPC, the New Zealand provincial competition, a very big lock, and they need that. Josh Larson's getting older, the Canadian player, so they need to get him in there. Connell McKerney is a hooker. He's a capped Wallaby hooker for the Free Jacks. He played a lot of, only 2 caps with Australia, but that works for me. Although 1 try, 18 minutes total, I think it's a really good ratio right there. Either way, cap for Australia. And then you got this big Fijian prop, Joan Koro Duadua. He has 3 caps for Fiji, a lot of time with Fiji Drua, 20-plus games, a couple of years with Claremont in top 14. He plays both tight head and loose head. He is a gigantic prop, a big dude. He's going to do great with that team. And also they brought in Kyle Steves, the old Dallas prop, 17 games, 1 start in 24. So he appears probably to be the backup coming off the bench for them in the front row. Returning forwards, Connor Keys, Jackson Thieves.
You forgot Geronimo Gomez-Vara.
I wanted you to say it.
That's my guy.
Of course.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, no worries. But they kept a lot of great players, like I mentioned. Connor Keys is huge, Jackson Thieves, and Wayne Conradi. They're phenomenal players and healthier as well. So it's going to the backs. I know I'm going fast just for a reason for this. Backs have signed Jack Reeves, big center, returns to the club. He's been with Gloucester Harper and Gloucester in the Premiership. Felatoi Pini, he's a fly half center from New Zealand. He's played with Auckland. He was a 2-time MVP with Auckland and Southland NPC Rookie of the Year not long ago as well. So the kid's got a bunch of experience at center and fly half. Yeah. Maybe a good backup for Jason Pachos. On the wings, there's a couple of Canadian Flyers. They play both 7s and 15s, actually, for Canada now. Brock Webster and Josiah Mora. Fast. They have a lot of experience at international level. Also, Lennon is back. Oscar Lennon has returned to the team. He's short stint with Bristol Bears. I believe he only appeared in 2 games for Bristol this offseason. But he's back. He came in late last year. Definitely a good backup for John Poland, if he's healthy right now. I'm not sure about Poland right at this point. But MLR Player of the Year last year, Wayne Vernerback is back. He's huge to have back with the team. So good. And I mentioned Jason Pachos earlier, arguably the best fly half in the league, if you ask me. And one of my favorite players in the Free Jacks is Paula Balacana on the wing. So much fun to watch. So if you ask me, they signed some of the more experienced players, I believe, into the league this year during the offseason with a lot of Southern Hemisphere experience, especially because, of Ryan Martin's connection to some of these players. But they're setting themselves up for a 3-peat, if you ask me. And an interesting note, recently it was a lot of fun. Recently there was a lot of videos online of groups of players spending an evening or so with season ticket holders. Like a number of them, like a group 1 here, a group 1 there, around New England. And they spent the night with them. I don't know if they spent overnight, but they had drinks, they had dinner, whatever else, and they just hung out with the season ticket holders.
Yeah.
I didn't get a phone call to do that, so I'm a little upset about it. But but I just think it's a great thing that the team does. Getting the community involved with the team and all that stuff. So I knew I flew through it. I'm sorry, I spoke fast. But it's just these are 2. I love Charlotte and I love New England. I think they're going to be Charlotte's going to be a totally different team this year. New England, I think, is going to set themselves up for at least a playoff run. And leading into that, Fitzy, I know you're going to ask me top 2 teams in the East and the West, right?
Sure.
I mean, since I'm here. All right, top 2 teams in the East. I've got Chicago and New England. I'm not going to say too much about it because the last 2 guests said a lot about those teams. So I do think it's Chicago and New England would be the top 2. I do think DC's right there, number 3. In the West, I've got San Diego and LA. All right, I didn't give much thought about Houston until this show, but I think LA is going to surprise a lot of people. San Diego, LA, can't rule out San Diego. Who wins it all? I gotta say New England.
Shit, you're gonna say New England.
I almost said Chicago, but I think too many people are listening. That might not want me in the seats anymore.
Yeah.
No, New England. All right. Anything you want to share about what I just said? No, you're going to call me.
Bring on Ryan Yee. Bring on.
Yeah.
Ryan
All
Yee.
right. Let's do this. You've been waiting patiently. Coming on now to talk about the West Coast teams. And again, not last of our guests, and maybe the least, depending on how he does in the Fantasy Ruckers League this year. Let's welcome Ryan Yee.
What's up?
By the way, you have to hear the
fellas?
intro.
How are
You have to hear the
guys?
intro song to understand what I just said there.
No, I did hear the intro song, and I wanted to say that where do I get my version of that song? Because that was lights out. Got me fired up to listen to the show. Has me sticking around for over the hour that I've been here listening to you guys. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, we have a crack team of jingle writers. We have a budget. We have a huge budget for this show.
Do they do freelance work? I'd like to submit a request for maybe some fantasy Ruckers work.
During the draft. During the draft, I'm like, we got to do a little jingle for him for every team, every player announcement. Instead of the NFL jingle, we'll write one for you.
Okay, all right. I'd love to hear it. But hey, good to see you guys. I mean, talking about and having all the discussions about the teams coming up this season, it's getting me fired up, man. We're just a handful of days away from some Major League Rugby, which is pretty awesome.
Absolutely. All right, so let's kick it in. You're going to talk about LA, San Diego, and Seattle. Who do you want to kick it off with?
Oh, tough. You know what? I'll save the best for last, and I'll wait for you guys to guess who that is. So I'm going to start off with Seattle here because I think a lot of people are confident with this team. They see, what they did last year when they went to the finals, obviously a staple of this league. Some questions, though, surrounding this league. Obviously, I heard you guys talk about it before with the departure of Mac Mason. You got a new fly half tandem coming in with Eddie Fuche, which I think he should be pretty solid. And you pair that up with Rodney Iona, and it's going to be interesting to see who kind of emerges from there. A lot of the familiar names you got there, but then you also got additions from the Dallas Jackals, obviously dispersal draft. Heard you guys mention at the beginning. I think every single one of these teams in this league has at least one Jackals player, and that goes the same for the Seattle team. They had DeWalt Kotze. I mean, we've seen what he's done in the past. Hooker position. And what was it, 4 tries last year that he scored in one game, I believe, and I think he was like one of the handful of guys that have done that.
5?
Was it 5 tries? It might have been 5 tries. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
You pair that off with the addition of Karan Van Vuren, who I think is going to be electric here for Seattle as well. And then you got your marquee names. Obviously, J.P. Smith, we could talk about. Rickard Hadding, hopefully, is a healthy full season. It's been a while since he's been able to, not play a full season in terms of that. So we'll see. And then that back line, I know they're missing Mac Mason now, but it's a scary back line. You got Dan Creel, who is the consistent of consistents. You add that to a back 3 room that includes Ina Foodie, Jay Stigling, Tony Pulu, and my favorite out of the bunch, I mean, Devon Rousseau is just an animal. Whether he's at the fullback position, which is where we expect him to be, or if he kind of subs into that center position as well. But Seattle also now has Mika Cruz as well in that mix. So Seattle looks pretty good. And again, they're as stable as it comes, right up there with your New England Free Jacks, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's true, right? It's true. It comes, when it comes to stability and it comes to marquee franchises, I mean, it's Seattle and New England, right? The 2 teams we had in the MLR Shield last year, they are the professional of professional when it comes to MLR and what every team should strive for.
Well, I was at the Seattle New England game the week before COVID hit in Seattle. And Alex Magleby and the Free Jacks staff were there talking to the ownership group of Seattle. So they got a lot from them, at least with entertainment, in-game entertainment, that kind of thing. So other than that, on the field, Ryan, what about players like Malachi Estelle, Eddie Fausch, who's just in fly half center? Mm-hmm. We had Malachi on the show right after he signed with the team, excited to get into 15s with this team right now. Any impact they should make right away?
I mean, that's the thing with the Seattle team, right? Like, they're a deep team. right? They got a lot of players at a lot of positions, and you add Malachi Esdale to that mix. You add, like you mentioned, Eddie Fuchs to the mix with the pairing of Rodney Iona. Like this is a team that's built to go far, and this is why people count them out, and then somehow they end up in the MLR final playing the New England Free Jacks, right? Like obviously last year there was the hype of the Houston SaberCats. There was the hype of all these other teams, and Seattle just sticks around. And the reason why they can do that is because they have quality players with quality depth, which is built for these long, strenuous MLR seasons. And all the additions that they've had this season, including Malachi Esdale, is going to play dividends for them this season. I think another competitive team here.
All right, let's move on to your second favorite team in the West.
Okay. Second favorite team. I see it with the anticipation. Fitzy waiting for what I'm going to say.
Because I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm maybe I don't now. Maybe I don't.
I'm going to go with the San Diego Legion here. So this is a team that looks solid on paper. I love it. I am so excited for the return of Richard Judd. I know there's Connor Tupai there, but what Richard Judd was able to do for this offense when the San Diego Legion made it to the MLR Shield final 2 years ago, he changes that offense. We've talked about that on our show and from a fantasy sense, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, but carried your brother to a champion, his one and only.
Yeah.
No more.
That's true.
Won't happen again.
I mean, everyone's one and only so far. So we'll see, Fitzy, if you can maybe take that crown. We'll see. But
I've got none.
Speaking about Judd, though, the speed that he plays with, the delivery, the breakdown speed, it's unmatched. And when you have a guy that's able to do that with the athletic players that you have on the San Diego Legion, they really, really benefit from that. I think it's going to be more of a mix, especially with the introduction of midweek games. I think we're seeing a trend when it comes to MLR teams, when it comes to people bolstering at a lot of positions and a lot of quality guys at positions, right? You look at Richard Judd, Connor Tupai, and then their freshly signed player of Aiden Conja as well. I mean, those are quality guys, but I think they're going to be bouncing back and forth between them because you might have a quick turnaround. I love the forward room. I love the additions of Jed Holloway, Brad Wilkin. These are guys that are absolute monsters, like beasts with a whole bunch of overseas experience that I think is going to bring that to San Diego. You bring that in with hopefully Christian Poitevin can kind of go back to kind of the days when he was really taking this league by storm, and you mix that in with everyone else they have. The backs, I'm excited for. I mean, they added Tavit Lopetti, which was probably the biggest within league signing that happened with the guy that was familiar that shifted teams. It's going to be interesting to see how he does with the San Diego Legion. Lincoln McClutchy looks to be distributing the ball. There is Harris Rutherford there too, Stephen Crimp. We'll see how they kind of mix in. Also the question of Ethan Grayson, who we have seen play at that 10 position as well, in addition to kind of where we've seen him at center too. But again, he has that Falcons experience overseas. And then, I mean, the back line in the back three, I'm excited, man. Like Ryan James looked really, really good last year. We'll see how he can kind of take that next step. And I think Thomas Awake is going to be a guy that has a big year as well. He kind of had a down year compared to what he had the year before that. But again, I think he's going to be one of the guys that really benefits from an increased playing speed, which I expect the San Diego Legion team to have.
We're looking at a guy like Patty Ryan, who will now have, he came in, was it last year he came in late in the season? Midway? Was it last year or the year before? Last year, right?
I think it was last year.
Yeah, so now last year, the few games under his belt in MLR, played really well with USA Eagles. Now he's about to set into his real first full year. So he should be due to have a really impactful year for San Diego on the loose forwards. But losing Greg Peterson, you mentioned some new signs this year. Who's going to replace him?
I mean, it's Brad Wilkin. Right. Yeah. I think it's Brad Wilkin steps in that role. Again, I think we're seeing the same trend, right? Like you look at this back row room, right? I'm looking at the depth chart now. Like you got Christian Poitevin, Patty Ryan returning, Chris Terori, Vili Hilu, Tavita Taimalau, all guys that are pretty solid. And then you add Brad Wilkin to that mix, and Jimmy Hokafonu as well. Again, it's just these solid teams have a lot of depth at these positions. And I think that's one strength that San Diego does have is this back row room looks pretty solid. Maybe not as good as New England's back row room, but they're right up there with them.
All right, so I think you have one more team left. I don't know if it's your favorite one.
So if you do the process of elimination, I think you guys can narrow down to who I'm most excited for this season. We make the joke on our show that I'm sometimes the bandwagoning fan, and a couple seasons ago, I was super stoked for a Chicago team that had the likes of Billy Meeks and bringing in a whole bunch of guys, and they had an absolute dud of a season. And then last year, I was just so excited to watch the Dallas Jackals play and the electric style that they played, and then they decided to fold. I even purchased a Dallas Jackals scarf from their fan crew. And then a season, like literally that same season, I had nothing to do with it. Now it just kind of hangs in my my jersey room as an homage to what was. And now, I mean, the team that I'm picking this year is Rugby LA. I mean, they are going to be fun to watch, and that's going to be the biggest thing. Is going to be kind of the step up that they can make this season. Obviously, disappointing year last year, but I think out of all the teams that have brought in big time players at big time positions, LA is the team that has done the most, and it makes me most excited for. Am I buying into the hype train again? Yeah, I think so. Is it going to bite me in the butt again? Probably,
maybe.
But I mean, when you see this team on paper, it's hard not to be excited for this team. I mean, you start at the front row position. Ben Strang, who is a leader of that room, is returning, and then you pair that up with Ben Sugars. We saw what Ben Sugars did in that Fiji and Drua game, and he looked great off the bat, and he scored a try there. It was fantastic. You have a second row room that has a bunch of returning players. I'm excited to see what Jason Dahm does. I believe they just announced their captains, and I believe he is the captain for this upcoming season.
He is, yeah. Today announced it.
And then this back rower, man. I mean, Semi Kunatani, right? Like we saw what he did last year. We had Andrew Coe on our show, who's on Rugby LA, and he says this guy is just a mutant. Like there's no other way to describe him. Like he'll just flick the rugby ball like halfway across the pitch if he wanted to. Like this guy is insane. And you pair that up with now the additions of Ed Timston, Ben Houston, Tim Anstey, like this should be pretty solid with Matt Heat in there as well. But the two guys that I'm most excited for, but also one of the biggest questions is their halfbacks, right? I think Gonzalo Bertranu, super excited for, right? Again, we saw, and kind of alluding to my conversation with San Diego, like the 9 can really dynamically change how you're able to play an offense, right? And I think when it comes to LA and the way that we've heard that they want to play, a well-distributed, fast-playing 9 is going to really benefit that. I think the 9 room was a little bit of a lackluster position that LA had last year, right? We saw Taz Smith there at times. I believe Carlo Denician was there as well, right? If I remember correctly, was it Carlo? I think that was there. Now you come with Gonzalo, who has international experience. He's represented Argentina, and he looked good again against the Fiji and Drua game. The biggest question, though, is what the heck they're going to be doing at 10. And please, Sam Harris, please don't do this to us again, because this is what is going to decide whether or not LA has a great season or mediocre season. Okay, we have Christian Lealifano, which, if you know this guy's story, like, I mean, come on, right? To have a guy like this come to the MLR, like, how can you not be excited, right? Like, this is a guy that is one of the top point scorers of all time in Super Rugby, right? Now here in the North American stage, a guy that beat cancer, came back and played at a high level. Like, you cannot love this guy. And he's going to do that here. The question is, he is older. I believe he's around like 35. Is he going to be able to withstand the grittiness of the MLR season? That's why it has me concerned that maybe we do see a little bit of Billy Meeks in that position. I don't know what it is with Sam Harris and his affinity. Obviously, him being a tax coach now with LA, his affinity to having Billy Meeks at that 10 position. But their optimal lineup will have Lealifano at 10. And we'll see whether or not that's the case. Again, it's sketchy because he is older. We've seen it in the past with big time names where guys like Ma'ananu, right? Like, obviously electric name, but he's going to take his breaks here and there, right? He's here.
Matt Gitto played until he was like 40, 41.
It's true. It's true. So I hope we see the same, man. I hope we see the same. But
is it Marcel like 38, something like that?
There you go. So
No,
Chris,
Matt
Experience.
Antisev, because Matt Antisev was an American who played a little 10 from last year. Played.
That's what I thought, right? Like that's what my original depth chart has, right? It was Leo Lifano going to come in and Antichev coming in to back him up. But watching that Fiji and Drua game and seeing the first sub that's coming in is Billy Meeks at the 10 position. I get it, it's preseason, but what, like if that's not a in the game plan whatsoever,
I think that was a tongue-in-cheek Sam Harris
meta
awareness.
That would be that'd be the ultimate. That would be the ultimate troll. That'd be the ultimate troll because let me tell you, he took Billy Meeks has taken a fat fantasy depreciation since then because of that. So we'll see. But I mean, just to finish it off, I mean the center position. If Billy Meeks stays at the center position, you got Billy Meeks, Will Leonard. Great guys, obviously, that are very, very athletic, are going to make plays for you. And Fitzy, I know you're high on this guy because you drafted him, I think, above his ADP in every single draft that we've been in is Nick Chan. Nick Chan is a guy that's building a lot of hype when it comes to this season. I've heard that Rugby LA loves Nick Chan. It'll be interesting to see.
Right, you got to remember last year, I orchestrated getting Billy Meeks on my second pick because remember, I had everyone so concerned about the visa issues. That's
true. You did. You did propaganda on our show. I get it. That's why you're no longer a guest on our show because I can't be having you.
I orchestrated it. It worked.
It worked.
But it didn't work. Billy Meeks didn't have the best season.
You are Rugby Morning's John Fitzpatrick. Credibility is supposed to be the marquee of what you provide. I don't. Yeah, that's fishy, John.
All's fair in love and fantasy.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I actually have that tattooed right above tramp stamp there.
Hey! It's the family show.
Lastly, though, just to finish off this team, though, Bill Baker, because what I'm most excited for this is the back three. I mean, you got Rory Van Voot, Andrew Coe, Jack Shaw, right? Those are guys that are already with LA. You pair that up with now the addition of Christian Dyer. Vogan Isaacs, who before he got injured last season, looked like he was going to take this league by storm. Yeah. I don't know how much of an integration he's going to have this season because of that injury. We saw not as much in the preseason, and then Reese McDonald is going to coming in with the reinforcements. Like I think 4 or 5 weeks into the season.
Yeah,
I mean it's hard to not be excited about this LA team. So I'm pumped up.
All right, man.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Bill. I didn't want to step on your toes. Go ahead.
Just one note. I'm interested to see how Micah Sisseni does. Back from Asian, finally reappearing in a team somewhere. Yes. He should be hopefully fit and good for them. That preseason game against Fiji Drua, I didn't see it, but can you just briefly tell us about that? Can we put any weight into that result? Was that a full strength Fiji side? Was that, you know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely not. Like we made the joke on our podcast, right? Because obviously Super Rugby is starting up this weekend, and I believe Fiji and Drua is playing the Brumbies. And my brother, I think it's a 3.5. The Fiji and Drua are 3.5 underdogs in that match. And my brother said, look out for the upset. So I'm like, okay, if I do the math here, that means that because LA was so close to Fiji and Drua, that means LA can beat the Brumbies. No, let's slow it back here, right? Like Fiji and Drua, yes. Was it a cool, momentous match for the league in terms of having a crossover of what is my favorite league in all of the world? Yes, it was very cool. But no, it was not their strongest side. It wasn't even the strongest LA side either, right? Like they were rotating. It wasn't a full-time match, but you still have to give credit to them. It was a competitive, fun match to watch. You'll take little notes here and there, and you'll move on with it. But I think it was more of a kudos to the MLR for doing something really, really cool rather than saying that LA is on the scale of necessarily beating Super Rugby teams at this point.
No.
Yeah.
All right, Fitzy, wrap it up. You got this last question.
All right, Ryan, give us your top 2 teams in the East and the West, and then who's going to win this dang thing? And don't say the Free Jacks. Go.
All right. Well, top 2 first. I mean, I know this opens up a whole other can of worms, but I'm a proponent of just like how I hate how a majority of teams make the playoffs this year, right? So like really anyone can win, right? I know it's easy to say that, but you just have to have a good match on a good day, right? We saw what Dallas Jackets were able to do last year, so anything can happen. But from a season-long perspective, top 2 teams, starting with the East, New England I'll put up there. You can't take down who is a team that, again, is the marquee of stability. I'm actually going to throw Nola Gold there at number 2. I love what they did this season. I love the additions that they've had this season. I get it. They were almost like an Exodus Part 2 to what the Utah Warriors were doing. It seemed like everyone was leaving NOLA, but then they backed it up with additions that you guys talked about earlier. So those are my top 2 teams in the East. And then in the West, I'm going to go with second. I want to say, I think the second spot is a toss-up between 3 teams, and that's Houston, Seattle, and San Diego. But I will throw in for now San Diego in there. I'm pumped up with what Richard Judd can bring to the team. I know it's only one guy, but I think he can bring this team back to what they were a couple of years ago. Top team, call me crazy, but RFCLA. I'm gonna put my eggs all in the same basket and
over the Free Jacks in the finals.
I know that RFCLA finished last year, but I mean, you can't deny who they've added.
It'd be a great story. Worst the first, right?
Worst the first. I mean, and we've seen it, right? Like, we've seen, like, look what Houston's doing, right? Like, Houston used to be a team that couldn't win matches, and then now they can't lose anything. So, yeah. I mean, it happened. This league, out of all leagues, is one that's volatile, that really anything is possible. I know, cliche, but
why not? This whole show is full of cliches.
There you go. No kidding.
Ryan Yee, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you not familiar with it, check out the Fantasy Ruckers on all social media channels, pretty much, online, Discords. Check it out. How many leagues are there now?
There is. I'm having like a jersey here because Fitzy
that's
was
the championship.
Questioning whether or not his name was on the jersey, but there it is,
etched in silver pen.
Etched in silver. No, it's full on. It looks like that in camera. We full on got it embroidered. Okay.
Oh, nice.
No, it's not embroidered. It's completely Sharpie pen that I do in my arts and crafts room. No, we have 7 leagues this year. It's grown by almost 150% there. Or what's the math there? Yeah, we've had at least a few more leagues than we had last year. It's going to be exciting. We have some money on the line this year with some of our leagues, which is interesting. And yeah, it's been a fun journey with all that. But yeah, I appreciate the plug. But yeah, at the Fantasy Ruckers, if you want to get a little taste of fantasy MLR and what is a North American style fantasy platform, we're where it's at. And I know that our leagues have all closed up, but we got a weekly challenge that's happening still. And if you want to just dabble, try it out each and every week, you can do that. Sign up, fantasyruckers.com. Check us out.
It's worth it, guys. Check it out. Ryan Yee, thank you so much. We'll chat again soon.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. All right, there we go. Again, I think it's 3 shows in a row. I'm good with not kicking the guest off too early. I'm a streak, man. I'm going to keep on saying that till it's 18 and then go there. Yeah. Fitzy, this has been a late show, an hour and a half show. But you know what? We had so much great input from our guests that I couldn't shut them off. Couldn't come off. There was just so much good stuff. And stuff I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about that player, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm excited. You're pumped for this weekend?
I am very excited for the start of MLR. Also, for those listening, make sure you stay tuned for a bonus episode. We chatted with the duo, the filmmakers behind Quest for the Shield, the documentary that followed the San Diego Legion. It told the whole story from their inception through the 2023 MLR Championship Final. But that was Deirdre and Justin. It's a great interview. I think we're going to see we're going to see some more rugby documentaries possibly from this duo. So check that out. It's coming out as soon as Bill can get around to publishing it. So Bill, what are you doing tomorrow?
No.
Get it together.
It will be soon. Yes, it will be soon. It will be a bonus episode probably within the next week, if not sooner. But yes, we'll get it out there. And it's just great to see rugby content, no matter what it is. Documentaries, us, TV, ESPN Plus. If you didn't catch that, ESPN Plus and ESPN2 will be covering MLR matches this year, so check that out. Fitzy, shall we play us out with our jingle?
Yeah, do it.
Let's do this.
And now, the MLR 2025.
I'm going to go ahead and hit somebody right now.
James Deeley, Rob Hammerschmidt, Ryan Yang! Seawolves, San Diego Legion, NOLA Gold, Houston SaberCats, Miami Sharks, Old Glory DC, Chicago Hounds, Anthem Rugby Club, Los Angeles Rugby FC, and reigning champs New England Free Jacks. Who wins it all? One really knows. Let's discuss.
Thank you, buddy. Good job tonight. See you next week. Cheers.